Hello, I'm Alex. I bought my first house 5 years ago, and after growing up in a house where my dad would never pay someone for a job he could do himself, I've learned how to do it in my spare time. Now I'm here to teach you too. Welcome to You Can Do It, a wall panelling series with BandQ, where today we're going to talk tongue and groove panelling. Take a look at this. Here we are in the BandQ studio where today we're installing tongue and groove cladding. You may have also heard tongue and groove referred to as shiplap or button bead, but it's essentially a system designed to go together like a jigsaw puzzle. That makes it super easy to install and means it's the perfect addition to your entranceway or utility. The utility space in your home can often be a blank canvas with white walls that often becomes a bit of a dumping ground. I know it definitely does in my home. What I want to show you today is how by adding colour and texture to the space, you can create not something that's only beautiful, but is also really functional too. Today I'm taking inspiration from these wallpapers. I love this one with the pattern, and I think this blue could be a real hit for the panelling. When I'm choosing a paint for this space, I'm going to opt for a scrubbable paint, so as when everybody's kicking their shoes off as they come in the door, it's super easy to remedy. When you choose a colour for your space, you also want to think about what else you're going to add. Now, by adding some coat hooks to the space, you can relieve the pressure on your wardrobe from those bulky jackets while also creating functionality. I also like to consider the other hardware I'm going to have in the space, things like sockets, door handles. By having these all the same finish, you have a design that goes together really beautifully. One of the other things that I consider when doing my panelling is that I love to finish it off with a shelf, and to hide the join, I often use a dado rail. Here I've got a couple of different choices of dado rail, one that's a bit more traditional and one that's more contemporary. I tend to opt for this in any designs that I do, and I love having all of these physical items to hand to play together, and by doing this you can create a really cohesive and beautiful space. The first thing we need to do in our space is measure it along the width of our walls, and then how high we want the panelling to be. I measure that to be 363 centimetres. When I'm doing this project, you need to think about where you want your coat hooks to be, and I do this totally by eye. So what I do is stand back and think, probably about here. Now you might have some little people in your house, you might have some taller people in your house, so it's totally personal preference. So I make a small mark on the wall, roughly where I think I would like my hooks to be, and then use my tape measure to go up to that height, steady it with my foot, and then take my rough measurement. That's about 160. It will go just ever so slightly higher because we'll add a shelf and a dado rail, but we'll use 160 as our measurement to work to. Oh wait, over here, over here. Hello. Ah, perfect, here we go. So when we're doing tongue and groove cladding, the one thing that is really important to check is that it fits together a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. So you want to make sure that none of the grooves down the edge of your panels are damaged at all, or else it won't click together on the wall and it just won't be as nice a finish. The other thing that you want to check is that you've got the same type of tongue and groove cladding for the whole way across the wall. Sometimes if water has gotten to them, they can go a bit wonky, so you want to just look right down the length of your wood, make sure it isn't warped, and do this for all of the packs that you need for your project. If you follow those top tips, you'll have a perfectly clad wall every time. What I'm going to do is see if we can get our colour matched on the BandQ paint match service. I haven't quite been able to find it, so I've got my sample here. Hi, I'm looking to get a scrubbable paint for the project I'm working on, so if I could have 2.5 litres mixed up in the Valspar Premium Kitchen and Bathroom. Yeah, perfect, thank you. When choosing adhesive for a project, you can get it in a container like this, which you squeeze onto the panelling as you go, but I much prefer using this, which goes into a cartridge guns and gives a much more consistent line of adhesive as you move on with your project. Now, once we know where we are on the wall, we of course want to make sure we're consistent the whole way across so we don't have any wonky panelling. And to do that, we're going to use a laser level. So what we have to do is put our laser level towards the wall. Now it may sort of wobble a little bit, but wait until it completely settles so as you know you're working to a straight line. Much better. So as you can see, this is going to guide us across the wall. What we're going to do now is get some frog tape to create a template to keep us completely straight. So smooth. You don't have to worry about this damaging your wall at all. When you take it off, it should be completely damage free. prime and paint the panels first of all. What we're using here is wood primer. This is a really important step because we don't want all of our paint to be sucked into the wood once you put it onto your panels. Now, on our panels, we've got a small groove, which is where obviously the pieces fit together like a jigsaw. So you just want to use a thin paintbrush to make sure you also touch those up, because part of those will be slightly visible even once it's all connected together. What I'll do is leave them to dry, so it's then time to get on to painting them. Now, when you're painting tongue groove panels, I like to go with my brush first of all and then finish with the roller after. You likely will need 2 or maybe sometimes even 3 coats on these. It's time to get them cut to our desired length. We already know from our template that we have to get this to be 160. So let's get cutting. There we go. Now let's get this first panel on the wall. So when you want to put your adhesive onto the panel, you want to think about having maximum surface area. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to go down in a zigzag line. So what you want to do is position your first piece up onto the wall, and then we're going to get a spirit level to make sure it's completely straight. Now, if you find in your home that it's not completely straight, what you would do is just come out from the wall ever so slightly, because we'll be able to cover that later when we fill and paint. We've reached along the wall as far as we can before we've hit this obstacle, which is a socket. I'm going to show you exactly what to do to get around it. Now I'm going to change it out for this brass socket, which I think will give a much higher end finish. You'll notice that the back of the socket has a much smaller area that you actually need your hole to be rather than the front. So we'll use this as a template for cutting the panel. Measure the height from the bottom of the skirting up to the corner of this socket, and measure from the edge of the lip into the bottom corner of the socket. So now we've got our measurements from the socket, we're going to transfer those onto our panel. Let's cut it out. So I've unscrewed my socket here, so I'm able to pull it out in front of the panel, and that's going to cover just nicely. We've worked as far across the wall as we can with our full strip panels. Now we have this small, tricky section that we have to cut. We want to first of all make sure that we're measuring from the right edge. Measure 2.5 centimeters the whole way down the length of our piece of wood. We will draw a nice straight line to give us a guide to work to. When you've completed your paneling, you might find that some sections need a bit of extra help with securing to the wall. To do this, you can use a nail gun. The trick here is to pull down on your tape, not up from the tape. That way you get it all off in one clip. I want to make sure I have a really nice clean finish at the edge. So I'm going to add this piece of strip wood to create a small shelf. I apply a small bead of adhesive along the back, and then I secure it at an angle using my nail gun. So to hide this gap between the shelf and the paneling, I'm going to add a dado rail. We want to do a 45-degree bevel cut. On the back of your saw, you will see that you have a nozzle. Once you're at this furthest point, you know you're at 45 degrees. Turn this nozzle clockwise to secure the saw for safety before cutting. This is the end of our wood that we want to cut, because this is where it's going to meet in the corner with another piece. And it fits just like a puzzle. Now that our dado rail's up, we're on to the finishing touches. If you find you have a small gap at all in between your shelf and your dado rail, you can use some decorator's caulk to go in between the edge here, wait for it to set, paint, and you'll have a completely seamless finish. It looks fab, doesn't it? I've added some hooks to the space, and I made sure that they were the same finish as my socket. That's a great way to end up with a really cohesive look. All of the tools and materials from today's episode are listed in the description below. Don't forget to tune in to the rest of the series. See ya! I hope you enjoyed this wall paneling episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tune in to the rest of the series.